Hi, everybody. My name is Kaylee Pugliese with the New England First Amendment Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us for another 30-minute skills lesson. And for those joining us for the first time, welcome. These monthly lessons are a quick and efficient way to hone in on your reporting skills, build on your First Amendment knowledge, and as many of you know, they're also more than that. It's a great way to reconnect with the community of journalists, researchers, attorneys, and academics. So to everyone, please use the chat to introduce yourself, showcase your own work, and connect with others that are here. And also make sure you register for our upcoming lessons, such as how to start your own podcast, how to create a nonprofit newsroom, how to use the Signal messaging app, among many others that we have coming up. All registration links can be found at nefac.org. And also previous 30-minute skills lessons are available at nefac.org/30-minute skills, and they're also on our YouTube channel, 5 Freedoms. Today's presentation is Broadcast Journalism 101 with WPRI reporter Sarah Guernelli, and these classes are supported in part by the estate of Gloria L. Negri. Gloria was a trailblazing journalist at the Boston Globe for more than 50 years, and this program is part of her legacy of newsroom education and her lifelong commitment to local journalism. You can learn more about Gloria and other NEFAC supporters at nefac.org/supporters. Now, during today's presentation, I again encourage you to introduce yourself in the chat, share your experiences, your resources, and you can also use the chat and the Q&A button to ask questions for Sarah, and we'll get to many of those questions as possible at the end. Now, we have a lot to cover and not a lot of time, so let's get started. Sarah, it is all yours.
I'm Sarah. I'm a consumer investigative reporter at Channel 12 in Rhode Island, also the 6:30 anchor here. Briefly about me, I started my first job in journalism at Channel 7 in Boston, and after that, I went to Western Mass News, where I was an anchor reporter, and then I came here as an investigative journalist. So I'm hoping I will leave you guys with some tips and tricks that you can use. I know we have a mix of college students who are potentially interested in going into the broadcasting field and also journalists who are already in it. So I'm just going to briefly give an overview of some people that work in the newsroom if it's new to you. So we of course have our anchors who deliver on-air stories. They're our main personalities. We have reporters who go gather information and stories out in the field, bring them either back in studio or report live. They also do breaking news. We have MMJs, which are becoming really popular. So if you are getting into the business, you might be expected to do this. You shoot, write, edit all of your own stories. It's a fun way to be able to show your personality when it comes to your storytelling. And then we have producers who organize and format the entire show. And then we have our photogs who often work on breaking news. They work with our reporters, our anchors, and to put the packages together. And then we also have our editors who put the shows together. Okay. Go to the next slide. Can you see that okay, Kaylee? There we go.
Yep, you are good.
Okay, great. So let's talk about storytelling and TV news, because there's a difference between traditional paper reporting and what you see on TV. So a traditional TV package is around a minute and 30 seconds. You have a short time frame to really get all of the information that you need while also grabbing a viewer's attention. So to do that, you really want to use your strong visuals and sound bites. You might not have great sound as an interview, or you might not have any sound at all. So how can you use visuals to really tell your story? Can you describe a house fire? Can you use court documents to show some interesting facts in the case by highlighting them on TV? And sound bites, if you have a real strong personality that delivers something very well, whether it's emotional or with frustration, then you want to use those bites at the top of your story. This makes sure that a viewer can feel someone's emotion while watching your story that you're sharing. Like I said, focus on emotional responses and human reactions. Those are big keys because we as humans, we can really feel if someone is sad. We can see if someone is mad or frustrated. So leaning into emotional responses will have viewers more engaged in your story. Again, we only have a minute and 30 really to tell a story. So how can you get someone to stop scrolling on their phone and look up? Well, that's a good soundbite. Did someone say something outlandish? Put that at the top. You want to be able to make sure that someone walking by the TV might do a double take and say, wow, what's going on here? On-screen graphics can be incredibly helpful. My tip for that is don't overload them. If you have a story that you're reporting on, say it's with a lot of data and numbers, keep it simple, 3 to 4 bullet points. You can describe in your tracks the more details of what you're talking about. But for the viewer, make sure it's simple, that they can read very quickly and easily. Again, think of someone on their phone, they're glancing up and they're like, huh, that's interesting. Um, don't overload them. And then write stories in a conversational tone. It's important to make sure that when you're writing, you sound like how you would normally speak to your friend or your grandmother. Can you break a story down that's complicated and deliver it in a way that's easily digestible for the viewer when they're watching? Because we only have such a short amount of time. And if you're overloading people with too many facts and too many details, they might get bogged down and then they're lost in your story. And then we're also always working on a constant deadline. You know, you might be at a house fire and then you're going to be switching to a different breaking news scene. So you want to make sure that you can be nimble when you're first starting out. You're going to be thrown around no matter what. If you have an interview that's late in the day, here we have a 4 o'clock show. I know a lot of stations do. Um, if you can't get an interview till 2:30 and you're on at 4 o'clock, is there a way to prepare ahead of time? Can you write a few tracks that you can ask your interviewee a question specifically about? That'll help you really shrink down the amount of writing time that you'll need. Just preparation is really key when it comes to tight deadlines for TV news. Oh, I went backwards. Let's go. This technical difficulties. Okay, so I spoke about visuals. So here's a 1 minute video that I wanted to show you about different ways that you can showcase your work.
I fought my whole life for my kids, for Lorraine. I continue to do so in her death. And although the pain will never go away, it does. We do have some resolve.
One by one, fake prescription pills drop from a machine. This video from the Rhode Island Attorney General's office was used in a case to prosecute Matthew Heel of Pawtucket. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison after being found guilty of possessing more than 10,000 counterfeit pills containing fentanyl in 2019. Do you guys have any kratom by any chance?
Oh my god. So a whole wall. Do you like powders, capsules, extracts, teas?
Kratom. For years, it's been an illegal herbal substance in Rhode Island.
It's pretty interesting when I walked in there. I didn't expect to see so much kratom.
Yet, Target 12 found the product being sold at stores statewide.
Where else can you get this around here?
You can, banned.
Oh, no way. All right. So, before we get to interview techniques, let's really hone in on video. You'll notice that the pressed pill video, that really stands out. You're like, wow, I'm getting an inside look at someone making fake pills. That is not something you can really replicate when it comes to print journalism, because a print journalist can really describe what they're seeing, but you're not visually seeing it. So it really stands out to a viewer that they are going inside pretty much an investigation and seeing that. The kratom piece was an undercover piece, which I know not every TV market does, but think of just creative ways you can tell a story. If you can't shoot video inside of a store, you'll notice there was a video of my colleague and I in the front seat, and I'm just describing what I saw when I walked in there. So if you can't necessarily mic yourself up and go into a store and have a photog shoot you from the outside like I did, can you still tell the story by walking in, seeing that there was something illegal being sold in there, and then describing to someone else what you saw in there? That's just a different way that you could tell that story if you can't go fully undercover. Um, so I want to touch on some interviewing techniques that I think are incredibly important. You're going to develop these as time goes on. Always engage fully with the sources to make them feel safe expressing their emotions. I can't harp on that enough. When we're a journalist walking into someone's home, it's incredibly intimidating for a camera to be in front of them, let alone talking about something that's really, really emotional. That woman in the first clip that you saw, her daughter was killed in a murder suicide. And while your photog is getting set up, make sure you're talking with them, engaging with them. It doesn't have to be related to the story, it could be about anything. Give them a sense of your personality so when you sit down, they feel more comfortable to talk to you. Don't be afraid to show your own emotions. I find that if I'm in an interview where someone is crying, it does make me tear up. I'm not going to hold back my natural emotions because when I'm feeling something, the interviewee can see it too. And then it just creates this really nice moment on camera where someone can really feel comfortable to let their guard down. Always make eye contact, nod, and respond with empathy. You want to be engaged if you are even interviewing a state leader, for example. You don't want to be, dozing off thinking about the next thing that you have to do. You really want to be present in that moment so they know that you are listening and engaged. And that way you're going to get follow-up questions right after that. This is something big that I've been honing for the last few years, letting silence linger. I know it can be pretty awkward at first, but if someone is getting emotional, you don't need to respond with a question. You can let them have that moment. And oftentimes they will continue their thought or bring out a different side of their story just because of that silence. Don't feel like because you're the one that's supposed to be asking the questions that you have to follow up directly right away. Also, in confrontational interviews, this works really, really well. You might be questioning a state leader, and don't be afraid to respond, being like, well, I don't think that's accurate. And then you wait and see what they say. It catches them off guard. It also puts them in a place where they're going to fill that silence themselves. So don't interrupt. If you've got that kind of tone in the interview, use that to your advantage. I was able to do an interview with this man probably 2 years ago. He was so frustrated about a lawsuit that he was facing that he was crying and even spitting while he was talking. And that's because when you can feel the emotion in an interview kind of build up, let it linger there, let it stay there to see where it can go. Because again, when people are watching TV, it's the emotional impact that really matters. We all know a scary movie, it makes you feel something. You see a sad movie, it makes you feel something. So you really want to think about that when you are writing your pieces. Can you take the best soundbite and maybe not even use it in your package, but use it at the top of the anchor intro? Can you do a nap pop off the top? That's going to pull someone in. Okay, and I want to talk about on-camera presence. This is for people who are in journalism. If you're thinking about doing it, it's incredibly important. It is really hard to get in front of the camera for the first time. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, you feel weird, you're gonna stumble, make those mistakes. It's okay. They're gonna happen on live TV. Again, that is okay. You want to make those mistakes because you're gonna grow and learn from them. Always speak naturally and conversationally. I'll tell you a brief story. When I first got here 4 years ago at this point, News Nation wanted me to do a live shot. I hadn't even done a live shot here at WPRI. So this was my first live shot. They sent me a script to memorize, and I did that. I memorized it, And halfway through this very long, convoluted on cam that didn't sound like me, I blanked, completely blanked. And in the moment, it was embarrassing. I felt like hot on fire, but what I did, I just stood there. And it only was probably for about 3-4 seconds before they put the VO up so I can read my phone. But, you're going to have those mess ups and those frustrations. And so if you can write a story that sounds like you, it's going to be a lot easier for when you deliver that. That VO, that VOSOT that I read did not sound like me. And it made it more difficult because I was so nervous that I was memorizing some words that weren't my own. You always want to emphasize each key word when you have energy or clarity. So if you are at a house fire, it went up in flames, right? That feels like energy is coming through verse. I'm at a house fire and you can see smoke billowing out of the air. No, you can see smoke billowing out of the air. It is intense. So make sure you punch your words. Hand gestures are really great. I like to try to keep my fingers together. And so when I'm punching a certain word, I will use different hand gestures. You don't want to overdo it, but I think they really are a good way to make a statement and make yourself clear. Some people have stress hands. I like to bring my fingers together because this to me personally looks like someone is stressed on the other end. You're talking like this, you feel like you have anxiety. But if you're like this, you're prominent and you know what you're saying, it delivers better. Like I mentioned in that story, try not to memorize a script. I know it's really hard, especially when you're first starting. You want to get every single thing right. The way I do it is I use bullet points in my mind for my stand up. So that way, if I get stuck on a word, I can just transition into what I'm going to say next verse. Memorizing something, you miss a word, then your mind is going insane, at least for me, on, oh no, I missed a word. This isn't making sense. How am I going to wrap this up? So, bullet points in your brain, keep it on your notepad if you need to. A quick glance down will definitely help you through that process, and it will make it easier for when you go to breaking news and you have to ad lib off the top. You won't need to memorize a script if you start practicing bullet points in your brain. I spoke about hand gestures. Don't be too flaily. This gets really distracting. Prominent, you want to be authoritative. You want to have your shoulders back. You want to feel really strong and confident. Maintaining your energy. I had a mentor years ago when I was a writer at Channel 7. I used to go out on shoots with him. He would let me do stand-ups, and the best thing he ever did for me was have me stand in front of the camera and do my ins and outs over and over and over again. And he said, get uncomfortable. The thing about TV is what might feel good and comfortable for you, relaxed at home, it doesn't necessarily translate well on TV. So you want to feel a little uncomfortable at first when you're doing your stand-ups to kind of find where your groove is. Can you emphasize on a word and lean forward? Can you, look down and look up, add a little dramatic effect, if you will? How can you punch those words? But starting out, it does feel very uncomfortable to be in front of a camera. So almost do the opposite. You want to bring your personality full force, get really uncomfortable, and that way you'll know what feels right for you when you're on camera. Make sure you're always watching yourself back. That is a big, big help. Um, it'll allow you to realize like, oh, I didn't like the way I said that. I didn't like the way my hand movement was there. I didn't like my makeup, my hair. All those things are incredibly important for TV news. And for the girls out there, just want to touch on this briefly. Wear a little bit more makeup than you normally do, because lights wash you out. So add some extra blush that your friends might say you got too much makeup on. You want to go that extra step because it's going to really make you pop on TV. How am I doing on time? Okay, we got 5 minutes. Okay, great. So I hope I was able to give you guys something that you can walk away with, whether you're already working in TV Or if you're just starting out, just always aim to be yourself. People realize if you're relaxed and confident and you are who you are, the viewers notice that and they are more receptive to that. Is there a way you can showcase your personality on TV? Are you telling a funny story? Can you use a fun prop? Um, and, just make sure that you can just engage with different types of stories and the way that you would want to watch them yourself. How can you make them interesting and creative with techniques? There are ways to navigate complicated stories. Again, you just want to make sure that if you have something that's really high level, how can you make it very simple for the viewer to know? This often will happen if you go interview a doctor. They're speaking at a very high level. You might have to ask them, can you explain this to someone to me, as if I don't know what we're talking about what this interview is like? And then the last thing I'll leave you guys with is that relationships matter. It's probably the best piece of advice I ever got when I first started. I had worked in TV radio for a little while at a street team during college. And our manager said one time in the meeting, look around the room. These people in this room, your coworkers are just as important, if not maybe more important than your bosses. Because the people that you're with in class, at work, we're all going to grow up in our careers and everyone's going to go in different directions. And you never know what kind of connection that you're going to make with someone that you might need in the future. So make sure that you're always networking, make sure you're always kind to people. And, don't forget when you are a reporter out anywhere, the people that you talk to, they could be sources. You can turn them into sources, or you could just use them in an interview later on. Um, Years ago when the pandemic hit, I had gone to Italy maybe a year before, and I met a girl my age, and she was living in a village in Italy. And when the pandemic started, Italy was one of the first countries to go into lockdown. So I reached out to her, said, hey, I really had a nice time with you and your family in Italy. Would you be interested in doing an interview with me about what it's like to be in lockdown? Because it hadn't happened here in the US at that time. So, what is it like there for you? And we did an interview. And that's just one relationship that I made on a trip that I ended up turning into a really interesting TV story that people might not necessarily have a chance to do. So, again, I hope you guys got something out of this. Feel free to take down my email if you have any questions later on.
Perfect, Sarah. Thank you so much. This was super helpful. I know even I have taken lots from it. We've got one question for you, and it is any advice on how to remain balanced when focusing on human reactions, and how human emotion plays into broadcast journalism, how it affects journalism in the politics realm. Any advice on finding balance, in that area?
Okay, are those separate questions in the chat? Let me just.
Yep, just that one question.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of thank yous. This was a wonderful session.
So human reaction, you want to do your best to get both sides. So if you have a person right now who is very upset about, the Trump administration, for example, you can use that sound. Is there someone on the other side, whether it's a political figure, a public figure, that can balance out your story? That's incredibly important. Always look for, you know, if someone is saying, has a Republican view, make sure you're always getting the Democratic side, even if it is just in a statement. I've fallen to that I have a really one-sided story and I can't get an on-camera interview. Always get a statement, the very least, and make sure you use that statement throughout the piece. Some people will bury it at the very end. I like to say, right off the top, this is how someone's feeling and a state legislator says this. And then when we go into the package, the same thing again. I want to embed more of the statement throughout the piece so it can feel really well balanced. I hope I answered that for you.
That was great, Sarah. Thank
There
you
was
so
a,
much.
yeah, let me just read through. As far as emotions being damaged to journalism, I don't think emotions damage journalism, because at the end of the day, we are showing the public what is going on in our society. And so getting that emotional response is incredibly important, because that's how someone feels at that time. And you're making history. So it's important to just show that and just do it in the best fair way that you can possible.
Excellent. Sarah, thank you so much. This was a fantastic lesson. And it seems many people agree. So thank you so much. And just a couple last minute thoughts for everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we all provide these lessons as a public service to you. So please encourage your colleagues and your friends to join us each month for these classes. And also, please be sure to fill out the survey that you'll see at the end of this lesson. And then lastly, starting this month, for those who attend these lessons, you'll be receiving a certificate of attendance in your email super soon. So keep an eye out for that. But on behalf of NEFAC, thank you so much for being here. And we will see you next month for another 30-minute skills lesson. Thanks, everybody.
Hi, guys. Thank you.